I'm going to show you now how to add some clever calculations onto your pivot table over and above the standard sort of sum, min, max and average type of calculation that's easy to get to. So how we do this, we click inside the pivot table. I'm going to go to where it says values. In this case, I'm going to pop down the arrow for sum of sales. Obviously, when you do this and you're working on your own, you might have something different in there. But I'm going to pick value field settings like so. Now, the items that are in here are, should we say, the standard maths. Now, if I pick sum in here, what I do next is going to be based on the fact that I've picked sum. If I pick count in here, what I do next is going to be based on the idea of a count. So I'm going to pick sum. So think of this as the base of the calculation. Afterwards, I'm going to click onto this tab here called Show Values As. Currently, it says no calculation. Now, probably the easiest one to get used to is if I pop the arrow down and go and pick percentage of grand total, when I click OK, this is now going to show you what everything is as a percentage of the overall grand total for the pivot table. And if we play around with where things are laid out, all of the percentages automatically recalculate, which is really, really clever. Now, if I pop that down and go to value field settings again, it's based on the fact it's a sum and it's doing the percentage of the sum grand total. Now, if I go back to the tab at the start, summarize values by, and change that to a count, when I click OK now, can you see all of these percentages change? Because these percentages now are based on the percentage of the transaction count for the entire list. So again, like I said before, one feeds into the other. Now, I'm not going to show you every single variation of what you can do with this, but I am going to show you one other example. If I scroll down this drop down box, there's one here called, let's go for difference from. Now, percentage of grand total, which we chose earlier on, that describes everything we need to know about that item. So as you notice, when percentage of grand total is selected, I can't do anything with these boxes down here. As soon as I go and pick something where it doesn't fully describe what it's going to do, so difference from, but what are we doing a difference from? It's not mentioned in that drop down box. That's where, can you see, base field base item comes into play. So let's say I want to compare stuff on quarters. Now, if I pick quarter one and then click OK, this is now telling me quarter one's gone blank. This is telling me quarter two is that much higher in sales versus quarter one. This is telling me that quarter three is that much higher in sales than quarter one. So can you see it compares all of those quarters to quarter one? And if I go back in, value field settings, if I change that to a count and left this as, difference from, it would be difference from the transaction count. And again, can you see they feed each other again? Now, instead of picking the quarter and picking quarter one, I could choose to pick this item here called previous. So this is going to make this quite smart because quarter one will be blank, but quarter two is going to be what the improvement or the increase or decrease is versus quarter one. And then quarter three is going to show what the increase or decrease is versus quarter two. So it's always going to compare to the figure that's to the left, so the previous. And if you chose next, it's going to compare to the right. So once I'm ready, if I now click OK, this is now telling me that in quarter three, I did that much less sales than in quarter two for anise seed, but in quarter three for basil leaf, I improved by that much. So this is kind of like a running, ongoing up or down comparison of one period to the other, just by virtue of the fact that I chose sum and difference from in the quarter, and I chose to look at the previous quarter. So this would work for weeks, months, years, days, whatever you want to go for. So look, there's loads more options within that, and we access it by going to value field settings, pick the base calculation, then we go to show values as. I would encourage you to have a bit of an explore because there are some quite clever ones in there, like running total in or rank smallest to largest. Keep in mind that if you pick something in this list that isn't fully describing what you want it to do, like from or of or in, and it doesn't mention what the from or of or in is, that's where you have to choose items from the base fields. The other thing to mention is when you're choosing from the base field, you must try to pick something which is visible on the pivot table, otherwise it will give you an error. So that is a bit about further calculations that you can do within a pivot table.